getting into the weeds, but a live virus vaccine, if they give it to you, it can spread the disease. It can mutate in you and spread the disease. That's why most of the polio today, 70% of the polio today is vaccine polio that came from the vaccines. But so the regulators expressed a preference for dead virus vaccines. The dead virus vaccine, however, will not produce a durable or robust immune response enough to get a license. The way you get a license for a vaccine is showing that you get an antibody response for a certain amount of time and that it's a strong antibody response. But the dead virus vaccine won't produce that. But vaccinologists figured out that if you add something horrendously toxic to the vaccine, that your body confuses that toxic product. You add it with the dead antigen, which is the viral particle. Your body confuses that toxin with the viral particle and gets frightened and mounts this huge, humongous immune response. The next time it sees that virus, the immune response is there. So at that point, vaccinologists went around searching around the world to find the most horrendously toxic materials to add to vaccines. And there's a mantra in vaccinology that the more toxic the adjuvant, the more robust the immune response. And so that's why toxicologists and vaccinologists don't get along with each other. Because the toxicologist would say to the vaccinologist, well, I understand it gave you your immune response, but then what is the fate of that in your body?
How many times have we been talking about this, guys? I'm going to play a clip about this in a moment from the recent FDA meeting where we've played this clip many times. Well, I know we've all talked about an immune response, but, talking about the antibodies. And they go, well, we don't have a correlative for protection. That's what this is. As long as they can cause some kind of clinical on paper immune response, whether or not it's even the correct immune response, they argue it worked. Fauci even sort of admitted to that in one of these meetings. By the way, we were just recently censored on YouTube, like literally while we were just live. I think that's funny. I'm going to keep playing this for you, by the way. But for those watching, mid-show, that rarely happens, but clearly we're hitting nerves with some of the stuff we're talking about today. So guess what, guys? It's already live on another show because that's how we're hitting nerves with some of the stuff we're talking about today. Look at that, because that's how pirate streams work, because we have endless amounts of pirate stream channels and we're already back on YouTube. So hashtag screw YouTube, hashtag boycott YouTube. But anyway, back to the show.
Where is it going? Is it being excreted? Is it being lodged in the brain? Is it penetrating the blood-brain barrier? And the vaccinologists could not answer those questions and did not want to. So they basically moved the toxicologists out of these, out of the vaccine, the whole vaccine universe. Anyway, so when it was added in 1932, the industry said, Eli Lilly said, well, the reason, because everybody was saying, well, how can you put mercury into a child? Who would do that? And they said, well, it's a different kind of mercury. It's ethyl mercury, and the ethyl mercury is excreted very quickly, so it won't stay in your body. They had no science to say that, but that's what they were saying for years. And then in 2003, a CDC scientist called Picciero did a study where he gave tuna sandwiches that were mercury, contaminated to children, and then measured their blood, and the mercury from the tuna sandwich was there, a half-life 64 days later, so it was still there 64 days. And he injected the children with mercury from a vaccine, and that mercury disappeared from their blood within a week. And this kind of confirmed what Eli Lilly had said in 1932. Oh, it disappears really quickly from the body. And that was published, I believe, in the Lancet Pediatrics. But immediately, the journal began getting letters from people, including this famous scientist called Dr. Boyd Haley, who is he's the chair of that chemistry department of the University of Kentucky. And he said, what happened to the mercury? Because Picciero couldn't find it in the children's urine or in their feces or in their hair or sweat or nails. So where is it? And then NIH actually then commissioned a study. And because at that point, they were really trying to figure out, whether this was dangerous. And they commissioned a very famous scientist called Thomas Burbacher up at the University of Washington, Seattle, to do a study with monkeys, with macaques. And he did the same study Picciero did, but he did something you can't do with children, which he then killed the monkeys. And then he looked for the mercury. And what he found was the mercury, yes, it left their blood immediately. The ethyl mercury from the vaccines was gone from their blood in a week. The methyl mercury from the tuna fish was there 2 months later. But when he sacrificed the monkeys and did postmortems, he found that the mercury had not left their body. Instead, the reason it was disappearing from their blood is because ethyl mercury crosses the blood-brain barrier much easier than methyl mercury. The ethyl mercury from the vaccines was going directly to the brains of these animals.
And there is a huge point that overlaps with one of the cruxes of everything we've talked about, the blood-brain barrier, from the testing to Dr. Pilevsky spoke about how this is a problem with these previous ones. This seems to be a focus. So these studies are there. You can see, based on the science he's discussing, which we've talked about in the past, that there is a risk. Yet when the science finds the thing that's inconvenient to the narrative, well, that science is no longer scientific. Simple as that.
And it was lodging there and causing severe inflammation. And you know, we now know it's there 20 years later. So what, you know, so when Burb went off, and when I'm on the phone with Offit, and he said the ethyl mercury is excreted quickly, and I said, how do you know that? And he said, because of the Picciero study. Because the study by Picciero found that it was excreted quick in a week. And I said, but you're familiar with the Burbacker study that showed it's gone to the brain. And there was dead silence on the phone. And then he said to me, he kind of hemmed and hawed and said, well, you're right. It's not that study. It's just a whole mosaic of studies. And I said, can you cite any for me? And he said, I'll send them to you. And he never did.
That keeps happening. Same thing with Fauci. We'll get to the next one. But by the way, again, so this in real time, mid-video, which actually is pretty crazy, removed for violating their policy on spam, deceptive practices, and scams. Man, they're getting tired. They don't even know what to categorize this as anymore. I thought it was misinformation. I thought it was medical misinformation. Like, it's just so effing sad. It's just, YouTube is such a failing platform. It's depressing. But here's the new channel, in case you guys want to jump over there. But I don't know why you would be going on YouTube anymore, by the way. But here's the next one. Spiro shared a great clip here. This is when he met Fauci. And you'll find very interesting overlaps. The same kind of game is being played, which the real obvious point to make here, guys, is there's no way you can see all of this and watch how this goes forward and not look back and go, okay, at the very least, there's something they're hiding. But it's dishonesty. Right? You don't go, oh, I'll send them to you and then never follow up. Pretend to look for something and then not find it. And then, so what? Let's just say there's an honest engagement here. And he brings it up and go, what about the brain study? They would look into it, wouldn't they? They'd find it, go, oh, looks like RFK's right. No, RFK's right. No, they didn't do that. They're still promoting these things. So he's aware of that, doesn't care. Yeah, these are bad people, guys. There's no way around this. And this is why likely this video got taken down so fast and likely why they don't want you to hear this stuff.
Are exempt from pre-licensing safety testing. They don't have to be tested, and they're not.
He's talking about pretty much every vaccine on the market. And this is something that people don't understand, that we've been screaming about. A lot of us have for a long time. It goes all the way back to, even before this actually, but a prominent discussion of the MMR vaccine. Right? With Vaxxed and Del Bigtree and Andrew Wakefield and Brian Hooker, and this very real from the CDC. Brian was a whistleblower who literally told us that they burned evidence in a trash can within the building, and they never did. This is the truth, guys. The bottom line is the MMR vaccine, they had 3 of these together, and they never once tested these alongside each other, let alone tested vaxxed versus unvaxxed or people that took it and did not. They still push back on this. Again, I'll always reference IPAC and James Lyons Weiler, who did, in fact, do a vax versus unvaxxed study. And lo and behold, dramatically obvious that the people that were unvaccinated entirely were dramatically healthier in every possible metric. But fake news, though, right? So this is the truth. And it's easy to prove. And even Fauci put to the spot, just put him to the same thing Paul Offit did. I'll come back to you. Never did.
And I said this for many, many years. You know, I said not one of these 72 vaccines has ever been tested pre-licensing in a placebo-controlled trial where you're looking at vaccinated versus unvaccinated kids and looking for at health outcomes. Never been done. And Tony Fauci was saying he's lying. He's not telling the truth. This is vaccine misinformation. In 2016, Donald Trump asked me to serve on a vaccine safety commission, and I agreed to do it. And he then ordered Fauci and Collins to meet with me, and Peter Marks at FDA and all that. So I had meetings with all these guys. And I actually went into that meeting with Fauci with three people. One was Del Bigtree, another one was Aaron Siri, the attorney, and another one was Lynn Redwood, who's a very, very famous nurse practitioner, public health official in Georgia. And during that meeting, there was a referee there from the White House, from the West Wing. And I said to Fauci, I gave kind of a lecture showing what we knew. And I said to him in the middle of it, I had a PowerPoint. I said, Tony, you have said, and by the way, he's known my family forever. And, my uncle was chair of the health committee